All right, thanks for joining on the Batcave Beats today. I'm joined by a special guest out of Canada, Junior, and he's going to get started by sharing a little bit about how he first started getting into music.
Yeah, so I mean, I started in high school. You know, you meet friends, and they all want to start a band, and I mean, who doesn't? And so yeah, I played in bands in high school, and kind of cut my teeth doing it then, and then it kind of took off from there.
Who were some of the artists that, when you first started music, that you were looking at the most?
It's so tough because I have such a broad. I mean, every year I do the Spotify Wrapped, and it's always just like, oh, you're in the top 2% of genre wildness, essentially. Like it goes from heavy metal to pop to acoustic to instrumental. So I think I was brought up on a lot of classics, and the Beatles and the Eagles and Aerosmith and things like that. And I always pull from that. I mean, I've always kind of back when I first started in the early 2000s, a lot of my stuff had a blend of like the 90s in it. Now it's kind of, as I'm turning it older, it's a lot of 70s, 80s kind of vibes. I like to try to mix all that. So I would definitely say, obviously, I'm a musician, so I love a lot of pop artists, All Time Low and things like that. It's not just a phase. But I definitely always rely on the good old classics. Will forever be a Beatles fan. Alice Cooper is one of my favorites. So definitely try to pull. I feel like to not be boring, the more influences and genres you can pull from, the better.
Yeah. So you've had two different music endeavors. Let's start with your group where you were a lead singer that started in like 2018, right? And kind of
Yeah.
went through
So totally. Yeah. So before that, was in some bands in high school and all that kind of stuff, but nothing kind of major. And as that was kind of starting, it was called 4 Minutes Later. We had started the idea of just to release music, and not worry about, in the industry everything's so hard with image and with having all these kind of components and your marketing down and just all these crazy things. So we just said, why don't we just write some music, we'll put it out for fun, and just solely for fun, not worry about the business side of things. Let's just have fun. Um, and what ended up happening was we said, well, we know we want to be called 4 Minutes Later, and that name was kind of based off how quickly things can change in your life. Everything can be different 4 minutes later. We also like that it was, FML for short, so it's kind of a double meaning.
it.
And then, so what we did was we secured the Twitter handle, and it just kind of blew up. People started saying, well, this band doesn't have a face, they don't have a name, so it must be 5 Seconds of Summer, or it must be All Time Low, or it's this. And once it happened, like we went top trending on Twitter, or I guess X now, in the UK, the US, and Mexico, and we didn't mean to or do anything. So the hashtag Who is 4ML started trending, and we said let's ride with it. So we did an EP and recorded full EP, put that out, fully anonymously, and then as we were kind of getting ready to release more music, I always felt a disconnect. I like being able to talk with fans or hear their thoughts on the music, or just connect with them. And that became very difficult. And it was also challenging doing things anonymously because we wanted to be creative. I love, filming music videos and just doing art as a whole. And it was hard because because we were anonymous, they would find things like an electrical outlet and be like, oh, they must be from North America. It's not a European outlet in the video. And like just silly things like that just became so impossibly hard to keep anonymous. And I'm of the mindset, if I'm going to do something, I want to do it well. And I got to the point where I felt like being anonymous wasn't being done well anymore. And I said, you know what? I kind of really want to take creative control over what I want to do. And that's where Junyor kind of launched and as a solo project.
That's awesome. I think you see that a lot with there's a lot of artists out there now that you see that with who started with like a anonymous approach and have switched. Like Boy with the Uke, Four Bats when he first started, he always had the mask on. Now he has a lot of stuff with his face out in the open, and I think there is like that interest level from being anonymous, but eventually like for the long term you have to like connect with the fan base, if that makes sense.
That's it, right? Like, yeah, the music is all about connection, and for me, like, music is the most universal language in the world. You can connect with someone who you don't know a single word of their language with just through music, and so when you can't then do that, and you're putting music out saying, "Hey, listen to this, connect with it," but nobody knows who's behind it or the person that's behind it, it's really hard to connect with that. So, I definitely think, yeah, it definitely was a wise choice and fun, and it was fun while it lasted. It was a heck of a lot of fun. So and now it's kind of on to the new chapter.
Yeah. Did you do any live performances with that then, or no live performances with Saint Anonymous?
So the plan was, yeah, we wanted to, and that was kind of going to be where we were like, okay, this is going to be even more fun trying to do this anonymously. You know, we talked about ski masks and how we're going to keep our identities a secret, and walking in out of venues and all that kind of stuff. Like we had a whole plan, and then the pandemic hit, and everything kind of shut down. And that's kind of also what pushed me further. Is let's do it by myself.
Yeah. But you've started putting out some singles by yourself and they've seen some traction. What's like the different perspective with that where it's like is it easier, is it harder when you go from having a sounding board like with you all the time for what you're making to just like you kind of are your own sounding board now?
Yeah, it's different in both good ways and bad ways. It's so hard. Like I always, whenever I make music, I always do it for myself first. And so when I'm putting something out there, I feel like I'm letting go of that, and it's now not mine. It's for the fans and everyone who enjoys it, friends and family. It now becomes theirs. Um, and so for me, I have a hard time letting go of that in the sense of just putting it out and hey, if it does great and it gets a million streams, amazing. If it doesn't, well, at the end of the day, I wrote it for myself. I wrote it from a true place. So I do try to let go of that. The first few days, it's always like I'm glued to social media and just seeing who's loving it, who's hating it. I've got pretty thick skin, so when people don't like something, it doesn't really bother me much.
Hmm.
But it definitely is fun having full creative control as a solo, independent artist. If there's something I want to do to promote it, something that's goofy, something that's fun, I'm going to do it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't.